Okay, well, we're going to talk about the Palo Alto School Board race today. We're in the thick of campaign season. It's 1 month till Election Day. There have been debates and forums and endorsements coming out. So we're going to catch up a little bit on who the candidates are and what the issues are that they're talking about. Eleni, can you start by giving us kind of a sense of where the district is now as opposed to a couple years ago?
I think the district, in terms of governance, is in a pretty different, drastically different place than even 2 years ago, with a whole slew of new leadership at the district office, a differently functioning board, I think, than 4 years ago, two elections ago. In terms of management, I think there's a hyper focus on compliance and order in a way that has been really lacking in recent years, and is clearly a response to that. You can see that in the new superintendent. And so I think the last 2 years in particular also were just really tumultuous for the community. There's a variety of issues that were really divisive, and those things haven't gone away. So those, I think, will be they're part of this election and will be part of what the new board faces. But I think in terms of governance, it's a stronger district. Yeah.
So I think in your cover story today, which covers the candidates, you speak of being possibly on the brink of something, a new change, a new era for the district. So we've got 6 candidates vying for 2 seats: Alex Scharf, Chris Boyd, Kathy Jordan, Ken Dauber, Shaunak Darup, and Stacey Ashland. And I know each one of them has their own issues.
Sure. What are some of the central issues that distinguish them?
I think a good place for people to look for that is our grid in this week's paper, which shows where they stand, in their own words, for paraphrase, on some of the key issues. Some of the more interesting distinctions: weighted GPA. Shaunak is the only one who has said he doesn't reporting weighted GPA for high schoolers, which is a really sort of intensely contentious issue last year, and could potentially come back to the new board for a vote if this is the first full year sort of looking at how it might impact electives and what courses students are choosing, and if it is impacting student stress in any way, as some people feared.
Is that actually scheduled for board?
It's not scheduled.
Okay, so someone would have to bring it up.
Someone would have to. So he's the only one who has said he's against that. Union negotiations is an interesting difference among them in terms of what they support for being public, or bringing more transparency into what is a pretty opaque process currently. Stacey and Shaunak, who are both endorsed by the teachers union, indicated they thought the process was fine as is, and then Shaunak changed his tune a little bit after our endorsement interview, and he said he would support what the city of Palo Alto is looking at for its labor negotiations in terms of sunshining counter proposals and proposals.
During the process.
General counsel, which is kind of a moot point because the board just approved this in-house attorney position last week, but it's been an issue for many, many years, even though it was technically an approved position already, but it was sort of lots of stalled progress, and so the board has moved forward with hiring this person, but Stacey Ashland opposed it. She's not convinced that it will help save the district money in terms of legal spending, which was one reason for doing it, or why the board supported doing it. Those are some of the key issues. There's also some differences on this teacher housing proposal to build affordable housing for teachers and staff, which is a county proposal, but the new board could be asked to vote on funding for that.
The funding would come from the district?
Yeah, so it's a county. Joe Samidian started this proposal, and he's asking different districts in the region to contribute, I think, up to $600,000. So Foothill is committed to doing that, and Los Altos. And so it has not yet come to Palo Alto for a vote, but it could.
Yeah, and some people think that's a good use of money, and some people don't. I think it was was it Kathy Jordan who said that she'd rather have the money, $600,000, kind of dispersed in a more equitable manner among teachers.
She said she's against it, and Ken Dauber he said he doesn't yet support it, so he hasn't said firmly that he opposes it, but he thinks that there needs to be sort of a more comprehensive discussion of solutions for teacher housing. And he's indicated that the board might have that kind of discussion instead of just a discussion of this particular proposal in the future.
Yeah, it seemed like he felt that development of housing by the district probably would happen or probably would be necessary, but he wasn't sure about that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this proposal specifically.
Mm-hmm. Are there specific issues that they all agree on or mostly agree on?
Mm-hmm. I think they're all very supportive of student mental health. I mean, obviously no one would come out against that, but I think in a more active way, in a proactive way than in the past. They've all indicated they would really like to support through funding, continuing to close the achievement gap and focusing on that. And I think they all agree stronger fiscal management is a really high priority, and that's sort of been lacking in recent years. They've also all been, I think, critical of increased legal spending, which the district is now trying to rein in through various means. And they also, I believe, all agree on the Stanford GUP, on Stanford sort of needing to pony up and do its fair share in terms of if students that come from the building that Stanford plans to do, they need to contribute more financially to compensate for that number of students.
Mm-hmm. Now, we mentioned a couple of the candidates already. I want to make sure that we at least mention some of the others. There are a couple who are focused on special ed. Mm-hmm. So Stacey Ashland's one of them. Alex Sharf is the other. Mm-hmm. What's his background?
So Alex graduated from Pali in 2015, and he's been very open about the fact that he himself was a special ed student here. He had an IEP and had a really hard time getting the services that he needed to be a successful student in PAUSD. So he's been pretty critical of the district's special education program, although the program that he experienced, I think, so he left 3 years ago, and I think there have been significant changes since then and are sort of in progress of happening. And he's also talked a lot about mental health and his personal experience with that and the students in the district needing more support, which is another thing that I think has made a huge amount of progress in the last 4 years.
Yeah, and he's someone who's talked very openly about what he went through and feels that would be valuable to the board because of personal knowledge. And also we have Chris Boyd, who's a director of an after-school program.
Yes.
And he did not cooperate with us entirely on your package, but he's stood out for his promotion of innovative or progressive education approaches. Correct, yeah. All right. Now, what's been the tenor of discussion? We've had a couple school board debates. How are the candidates relating to each other in this campaign season?
I think it's mostly civil, more civil than I think in past elections. I mean, our school board debate was pretty buttoned up. There's been some candidates are more critical of the past few years than others. Kathy Jordan in particular is very critical of the school board and the school district's handling of sexual assault incidents at Pali and just sort of general management and oversight issues. So I think she's come out as a more critical voice than some of the other candidates.
Now Ken Dauber is the only incumbent, so I imagine that he's the one who's on the receiving end of criticism. What are some of the things that the candidates have said about what hasn't gone right in the last couple of years? I know board relations with staff has been an issue. That's one of the things.
Yeah, I think given the high turnover in recent years, there seems to be people are sort of two minds on that. Either it's a positive sign of change and progress that's long been needed, or a different view, which I think is shared by Stacey Ashland in part, is that it's this culture of fear and blame, and that you only get one chance, and if you mess up, you're out, and that kind of thing. And a lot of intense blame, I think, is felt by staff at Pali, particularly in the wake of all the Title IX issues. Kim DiOrio left, Max McGee left, so sort of those departures leaving a sense of distrust among staff of the board.
Sure. Okay.
What does Ken Dauber have to say about this? Has he owned up to any of the pressures that have been put on people, or is he forward thinking about how this might change?
He, in our endorsement interview, we talked about this, and people can watch that online. He doesn't feel like there's sort of bridges to be rebuilt with the staff. He feels like the best thing the board can do is to be a well-functioning board and to ensure stronger management. And so I think that's what he's focused on, and he stands by the decisions of the recent years, including Max McGee leaving and him calling for his resignation, Ken calling for Max's resignation as being in the name of that sort of a better managed district. So that's the position he's taken.
Yeah, the separation of who's really responsible. It's the top management, and they're the ones that we the board need to focus on.
Right. Yeah.
So we should probably talk about Kathy Jordan and her issue with the Pali Campanile. There was something that happened last year that's kind of resurfaced during the campaign, having to do with her sending emails in response to coverage by the Campanile. So I understand that September 29th, Campanile published a story about a sexual assault case and had the sentence, "The incident was subsequently determined to be consensual."
That's last September.
Last September 2017, yeah. And then Kathy Jordan responded to that coverage by sending numerous emails to the Campanile staff, and that caused some reaction among the staff. Can you tell us a little bit how that rolled out?
So this was about one of the Pali sexual assault cases, the November 2016 incident. And Kathy has really taken issue with how the Campanile reported this. And the Campanile this week published an apology about sort of inadequate attribution and the phrasing of that determined to be consensual being inaccurate. It was not determined by anyone to be consensual. And the victim herself obviously gave a very different allegation of what happened. And so they issued this apology, which you can read on the Campanile's website, and said that they, mistakenly described what happened. But they believe that Kathy Jordan's response to that in her emails and text messages to their staff was inappropriate, and they felt like they were being harassed by her, and are now, I think, speaking out about it and clarifying their position because she is running for a school board, and they think that her behavior towards students is sort of unbecoming of a school board candidate. So they also came out with their endorsements this week, and at the end of the endorsement is an editor's note urging people not to vote for her because they believe that this conduct has been inappropriate.
Yeah. They picked up on the tone and the tone of her emails to them. And then the school district actually hired a lawyer to craft a response. So I understand that former vice principal, Janice Chen, sent that email. So it was 1 month after the article came out. And after a clarification had been posted, the clarification adding that the sources were Kim Diorio, who's the principal, and then also the defense attorney was one of the sources.
For the male student.
For the male student. And that email that Janice Chen sent had some pretty strong language. I think there was the word harassment in there.
Yeah, staff feeling threatened and harassed. And they said that after this email was sent, Kathy stopped initiating contact with Campanile staff.
Yeah, and I understand that there was a meeting that one of the students had tried to schedule with Kathy Jordan, and Ms. Jordan suggested that, or said that she wouldn't meet if the Campanile advisors were there. And so then it was going to be a meeting of the student and Ms. Jordan, and the student backed out of that.
Yeah, I think the students felt uncomfortable with that, and I assume that Kathy, who has expressed concerns about the Campanile advisor, Esther Wajiki's support of Kim Diorio and sort of her connections to this, the administration, is why she didn't want the advisor to be there. But I think the students felt like that wouldn't be appropriate.
Okay.
And the actual emails themselves, I mean, how offensive were they? I mean, were they things that
were they offensive?
Or were they? Yes, that's the other question.
Yeah.
Is that, anybody can make an accusation, and school districts, just as an observer, frequently seem to have a circle of wagons mentality. So it's like, was there any real justification for what they were saying about her emails?
I think, so they published some of her emails in their story online so people can read them and sort of decide for themselves. But the students felt harassed and felt like her tone was inappropriate. And I think Kathy would say that she's treating them like she would treat professional journalists, and she's pointed frequently to sort of the education code standards for student journalism, and has argued that the Campanile did not adhere to those. So Kathy Jordan said that what was
published was libelous. And then the students in their article today said that they had sent the article to a student press organization, which determined that it was not libelous, according to the definition of libel. So there's clearly a disagreement there. And I do recall one of the emails that was in the article today had the phrase from Kathy Jordan, I'm going to send an email to the school board to request / demand that you do such and such. And I think the students took that as being fairly threatening. I'm going to go over above your head. And, all right, and back to the election. So funding-wise, who's ahead in the campaign finance race?
Kathy Jordan is far ahead, raising more than double all the other candidates. And then Stacey Ashland and Ken Dauber are neck and neck behind her. And I think the next campaign finance reports are due in 2 or so weeks. So we'll see if Kathy maintains that lead or what comes out. And I don't think the fundraising is necessarily totally predictive of, the election results, but
sure, and it hasn't been that.
Yeah,
it hasn't been a straight line.
But Kathy's support is interesting that it's that significant.
Yeah, I understand that there's a large Chinese population who are donors to her campaign. Is there any linkage in terms of issues that they've been supportive of, and that she's also supportive of?
Certainly a weighted GPA, and she's talked about that. She's supported of reporting weighted grades, as are many Chinese parents who came out on that issue. There's also this concept of academic excellence that Kathy talks about, which is sort of undefined, and of course everyone supports academic excellence, but there seems to be something that some segment of the Chinese parent community has seized upon as that she supports academic excellence for all students. And I think also just her tactics and her tone as sort of someone who will go to bat for them and go to bat for things that, and I think also sort of shake up the status quo, like not being afraid to speak out even if it's not the popular viewpoint kind of a thing.
Sure. Well, people can go to various events that are still upcoming to see the candidates themselves. What are some of those that are scheduled?
There's a forum tonight from 7 to 9 p.m. I think it's hosted by ACCI and the Palo Alto Chinese Parents Club. The CAC, which is a special ed parents group, is hosting a special ed focus debate on October 14th. And then there's a secondary school focus debate on October 20th. And this is all on our website with locations and times.
Right. And on our YouTube channel, we've got the recording of the school board debate that we hosted on September 20th. And of course, we also have your cover story. It's posted there, plus endorsement interviews with the candidates. People can hear in depth 30, 40 minutes from each person on all of the issues. So lots to see, lots to study before November 6th. I know the ballots are coming out next week, the mail-in ballots, so people can get to it. Thanks for the discussion, and that wraps it up for this week's Behind the Headlines. Follow all of the news in Palo Alto on paloaltoonline.com. If you want to talk about the school board race, go to paloaltoonline.com/square, which is Town Square, discussion forum. And follow us on social media, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We'll see you next week.